Well, I believe that it's time for us to start with this webinar. Well, it's more like a discussion panel, to be honest, because I'll be making some questions and we'll get a response and we'll see how the interaction goes. The main purpose of this event is that we learn as much as possible from you guys on your experience, your real experience was searching for talent in Latin America and how to provide the best talent as well, right? So I would like to start just giving a quick intro to Symbiosis, our company. Basically, what we're doing here is that we're creating a marketplace for connecting tech companies in the US, normally startups, with software agencies in Latin America that have available talent. The idea is that you will be able to hire full-time developers remotely, so they will be assigned directly to your team, so you can manage as an extension of your team for 6 months or 1 year, and you will get all this information so you can develop your product accordingly to your expectations. So without further ado, I would like to share our special guest speakers today, Mr. Dana Kudin and Gustavo Reyes. Mr. Dana, he's a founder of Meesbox, which is a startup, very interesting startup that is based in New York, as he mentioned. And I would like you, Mr. Dana, to share more about you and your company. So,
sure. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Dana Coteen. I'm the co-founder of Meesbox. It's a training and operations platform designed for restaurants, focused specifically on daily operations, things like menu information management, digital menus, training and education of teams. And we're focused specifically on small to medium-sized businesses, restaurant groups that are looking to expand and grow with a sort of plug-and-play system that can help the organization expand from 3-4 restaurants all the way up to however many restaurants you want. I am based in New York. I started working on this project a number of years ago, and then in 2018, it evolved into 2019, it evolved into Meesbox, which is the product that you can go Google now.
Nice. That's pretty cool, Mr. Dana. And you, Gustavo, could you introduce yourself and share a little bit about your background?
Yes, of course. So I'm a software developer by education. I've been developing for around 7 to 8 years now. I still develop, but now I also do a lot of CEO management, like a little bit more boring stuff. But yeah, I'm CEO of Aluxi, which is tailored web and mobile development company. It started as a one-person company with me development, eventually demand rose, and 5 years later, here we are. We're currently a team of around 17 in between developers, project managers, team leaders, and we're based on Monterey. We're very focused on web and mobile development, and we try to use Python as much as possible. It's our preferred and core technology, and that's the reason how we got to you guys and Dana.
Perfect. We very much appreciate that intro, Gustavo. And please, for all the attendees, if you like to follow Meesbox and also Aluxi, you can find their information on the chat shortly. So, well, without further ado, I would like to share the dynamics of this event. Basically, we'll be having a discussion panel. So I'll be throwing some questions, but the idea is that both Mr. Dana and Gustavo can share and elaborate as much as possible on their responses, so we can all benefit from this experience and this information. During the whole event, we will have at the end a Q&A section for the audience to ask questions as well. But during the event, there's a Q&A chat in the screen, at the bottom part of the screen, so you can start writing your question during the event. We will read them out loud at the end, so we can also answer your questions. So without further ado, I would like to start. The first question is for you, Mr. Dana. How's your tech team currently conformed, and what technologies do you use?
I guess I skipped a step about my background as a person. I'm a 20-year veteran of the hospitality business. I'm not a technologist by trade. I've had to learn a lot about technology as I sourced a new development team post COVID. Our main front end is built in React.js, and the back end has a variety of technologies that I think Gustavo probably would be the better person to answer the whole scope of what technologies we use.
Okay, perfect. And how did you start building the first version of your product? I mean, like, do you have like an in-house team or do you use a third party?
Well, so it depends on when you start the history of this question. So actually, this product started in 2005 or no, excuse me, 2014 or 15, and it was a sort of ad hoc, customized WordPress site. So we were really scrappy. We had a third-party developer outsourced in Chennai in India, and it was never really designed. It was sort of like I wanted to do this, and so they built this, and then they built this, and we ended up with this sort of Frankenstein's monster of a product. And then in 2018 and 19, we redeveloped the whole thing. We decided to go with React. I brought on a new co-founder who was our technical co-founder, and we built a whole system from scratch: React front end, Django, Python backend, using Heroku, which was a very nimble, stable kind of plug and play platform that we could build on. And today, Gustavo has been learning a lot about how we built that. And we actually essentially rebuilt the platform in a certain way, and then migrated over to AWS this year. So that was an interesting project.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah. So for the founders out there, just start building. Just do it, and you'll figure it out. If it's a good idea, the world will tell you it's a good idea, and it'll unfold for you.
That's really good advice. And you mentioned India as the first resource that you find for developing this product. I believe that many founders are just find people like using offshore options, right? So what do you think about comparing offshore with nearshore in this?
Sure. I think that there's a lot of different factors that go into, who is the right team and what their skill sets are. I think, firstly, I inherited the development team in India for early kind of MVP of the product. And then we, on a separate project, I worked with a team in Poland, actually. So we were sort of moving a little bit closer to the US as we go. But I think things that that need to be considered, obviously, are price. I think language and skills, and I mean language both in technological language and spoken and written language, because communicating with your team is probably the most important thing that you need to do. And even though I'm fluent in English, Gustavo's fluent in English, even with all of our and I speak Spanish. So if there ever were something that, couldn't be communicated, we have two languages to choose from. Even with all of that, sometimes communicating what I want as a founder and what my idea doesn't always come across. So I think price is probably the first thing that I think any founder is going to think of. It's how do I develop this quickly and as inexpensively as possible, especially if you're not a technical co-founder or a technical founder. But you should be thinking about price, of course, and the time zones is also a big deal, because if something happens and you need your developers to jump in quickly, I think it's a 9-hour difference between New York and Chennai there in the future. And so that was always something that was a little bit challenging to manage as well. And I think a lot of these teams balance where they try to work what we would call off hours to try to make up for that time zone. But that was something that was definitely a consideration in moving forward with where we are today in Meesbox.
Mhm. Okay, that's pretty interesting. And one last question on this part: when and why did you decide to look at Latin America for hiring software talent? At what specific moment?
Yeah, so at kind of towards the end of 2020, my fellow co-founder who was the technical lead in building what is now Meesbox, we were sort of sunsetting him off, and obviously you can't have a software product without a development team. It needs to be managed, it needs to be developed, new tools need to be created. And so I was looking for, who's going to take this on. I looked at the team in Poland, and I forget exactly. I ended up on one of Symbiosis's webinars, and I was like, "Wow, this is a really cool opportunity." And to be honest, I had never thought about. I always thought about Europe, Ukraine, Poland, India. These are known as tech centers, and it just never occurred to me to think of Latin America, to be honest. And then when we met, and I watched this webinar, I was like, why didn't I think of this? Like, first of all, again, I speak Spanish. The time zone problem is much less of a problem. And yeah, so it was, to be honest, it was sort of a little bit of an accident. And now I'm like, why wouldn't I? Like, it just seems so obvious now. Yeah.
That's pretty interesting. It's something that happens a lot. I believe Gustavo can also jump on that part because it is pretty common that a lot of US-based companies are used to source talent from Europe or also from Asia. So it is important that Latin America is also becoming a hub, a tech hub for these companies. So Gustavo, I will have one question for you. When do you think is the right moment for companies in the US to start looking for talent in Latin America? I mean, at their stage, at what stage of their product development?
That's a great question because it's different for every company. I'd say start in source, and then when you have a product and market fit, then outsource. Because if you do it, I mean, it can be done from scratch, but it tends to be a little bit harder to communicate that need initially. However, if you define, and I mean this in a way because we do two types of development. Like, one is like staffing, which is kind of the model we have with Meesbox, where we Dana is the product lead, and we join as a staff and develop the requirements. And there's a different type of development, which is more product-based, where we go and do design sprints, do all the analysis, do mock-ups, and start the product. If you're going that way and outsourcing like the whole initial development, that's perfectly fine. But if you're looking for staffing and you want that staff to develop your product, you're going to run into trouble because normally it's overseen, especially by initial founders, that they might think they can bring in a developer and he'll take care of everything. And there's a lot more involved on developing a successful product than just the development. So I'd say if you have a good co-founder or a good team to start and design your product, and you're planning on developing internally, do so. And eventually, once you have a market fit, you have launched, and you want to develop additional features, then bring someone from a staff in. So that would be like my opinion.
No, it's pretty accurate, and I agree with you. And circling back to Dana's question on this part, what do you think is going on in Latin America? I mean, why is becoming right now a hotspot for tech talent?
Yeah, no, that's also a great question. It has been something I've never seen before. What's happening right now? and I'd say it started with the pandemic. Like many companies were forced to go remote, and then if they were going remote, I think they started asking themselves, okay, if I'm hiring developers here in US for probably $160 an hour, why not look on different locations where it might be cheaper? That was definitely something that started happening. I think in general, all Latin America, as you mentioned, has been growing a lot as a technology hub. And this has just, it was going to happen anyways. It just skyrocketed because of what we're living right now. So I don't think the development is going back to the way it was. It's a little bit going to become a hybrid, but I mean, remote work is not new. It has been happening for quite a few years now. But it's getting to a momentum where it just had to happen and exploded. So
yeah, I agree that all the pandemic and stuff, it like you mentioned, show us that it is important to have or to diversify your team and have different locations and be open to have remote teams, right? And people doing home office. It makes sense to look also to save some capital from these companies if you hire people from outside the US that are currently like good talent and they can also meet your expectations. So I totally agree, and it's something that is going to happen as it gets skyrocketed, like you mentioned, and it's going to stay for a while.
And it's a chain effect. Like if Mr. Dana is having a good experience with us, he's gonna tell his friends, and then I think that means that India might be, or like Europe or even the US might be the best option for some companies. It might still be, but I believe that myth around Latin America and the work that many Latin American companies are doing is talking by itself, and it's just an increasing reputation as a very potential ally for U.S. companies, especially smart startups, which do not have like a huge capital to spend, are starting to look more and more into our countries for opportunities.
That's right, and it's something that is going to happen, and it's for good for everyone, right? Like it makes sense for every company. Mr. Dana, you mentioned that you just start looking for talent given the event that we host a webinar on December here in Symbiosis. But in case that, for example, you can compare using Symbiosis and also using the alternative by doing yourself your own research. How do you think that could work? Or could you share more about your experience using Symbiosis and the other options?
Yeah. I think that it's important for any person, regardless of founder, whatever, to recognize that you don't know everything. And, there's known unknowns. There's the things that you don't know. And then there's the things you don't know. And I think a lot of founders, that second part is the hard part about starting startups. And I think, I've done interviews in the thousands in hospitality, but sourcing for this kind of project, I'm not a technologist. I don't have, you give me any position in a restaurant and I can assess skills very clearly. It's a totally different game to be assessing the technological skills of a company. It's very easy, especially in today's age, with all of the marketing tools that are available for anybody. There are beautiful websites that look very professional, and there's language translation tools that people can use to make their marketing very strong. But just because the marketing is very strong doesn't mean that their developers are good. Mm-hmm. And I think that the important thing with basically Meesbox is a nearly one-man show. And so while I'm running the startup and managing client relationships and all the things that have to happen with running the business, sourcing talent, especially when it's an urgent need, is really a full-time job. And to add that on top of the full-time job of being a founder is very challenging. And so recognizing that I was not really well equipped to do proper assessment of what technology companies I could work with and what their skill level really was, working with Symbiosis was incredible, because I had effectively this team of people doing kind of the pre-work. I told them about the product. I told you about the product, what we needed, as best that I could, and you guys went out and shopped for what I needed. And so when it was my turn to step in, so much of the work that I either didn't have the skill to do or didn't have the time to do was already done. And so what I needed to assess was the organizational capability. Do I get along with these people? Is the way that I'm communicating to them and the way that they're communicating to me something that I think has long-term potential? If I ask a question, is it being answered in the way that I want it to be answered? So I would hope that I don't have to ever do this again. I really love working with Alexi. I love working with Gustavo and the people that have come in and out on the project. But if I did ever have to look, and I know that this sort of sounds like a paid marketing plug, I promise this is not sponsored, but I would never not use Symbiosis. I mean, to have, especially as like I said, a sort of a single co-founder, to kind of use a turn of phrase, having that team do so much of the work that I wasn't able to or wasn't equipped to do it's a no-brainer. Yeah.
We appreciate that, Mr. Dana, and I believe that, yeah, it is important to, like you mentioned, so if you're a co-founder, you should focus on building your startup, right, and get help from other people that are specialized in different parts so they can provide the talent you require. Gustavo, in your experience, what's the best strategy for US companies for searching and finding good talent in the region?
You're asking a lot of great questions. Well, I'd say first, analyze your stack of technologies, and also look into a cultural fit with companies you are researching. The third factor, obviously, is consider the cost. They should be under your expected budget. You don't want to be like left halfway or not being able to complete certain milestones. So those would be some of the factors that I would consider when hiring a company. If you're considering looking into Latin America or other countries, then also consider the time zones, because it might not seem like it initially, but it does become a great challenge if you're on a totally separate time zone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I agree on that. And Mr. Dana, you mentioned a lot of things that you value a lot when you were talking with Alexi in this case. But what were like your main concerns? Because we have talked with a lot of founders, and they all seem like think like, is there really good talent in Latin America, for example? Is it, So we would like to hear from you. What were like your main concerns from hiring people from this region?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really interesting question, because I think there's talented people everywhere. Like everywhere in the world, there are talented people. So I think that if there is some, I don't know, like a stigma or a confusion, I mean, there are just so many talented people everywhere, and there wasn't ever I wasn't like, oh, there's nobody. I just never thought of Latin America as a technology hub. Like in the startup world, when the general conversation, at least the ones that I've been a part of, from early stage in 2014, 15 to even now, it's always first India, and then Romania, Ukraine, Poland. These are really sort of well-known technology centers, and I don't think Latin America really gets the press that these other countries have. And maybe that's changed in the last, I haven't done a lot of research into this, but maybe that's changed in the last 5 years or 10 years. And I definitely think the pandemic changed things, like Gustavo said. So yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure exactly. I'm not sure exactly, to be
Okay.
honest. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah, I agree with you. Normally, it's something that we're not aware of that until we have to, right? Until we realize, like, why I wasn't aware of this.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the it's like, why not? Like, of course there's talent, and I think maybe to give a more complete answer here, and I think I'd love to also kind of answer Marcus's question about the relative cost compared to offshore resources in Asia and Eastern Europe. I think that Gustavo mentioned this in the beginning about cultural fit. I think that is one of the most important invisible costs. And so cost, you have to think of, I mean, you don't have to, but I'd recommend you think of, it's not just money. So I would say nothing's free. You're either paying with money or you're paying with time or mistakes, right? So you get what you pay for. And I think from a dollar's perspective, the cost is comparable. I think that there's a lot of talent, it depends on the company and what your needs are and the experience of the developer. Those things are not different from Europe to Asia to Latin America, but the cost of having a cultural barrier or having a language barrier is expensive. It's very expensive, and that's never going to show up on an invoice. It's not going to show up on your P&L. You're not going to be able to analyze that. And I think what is particularly nice about the relationship with Gustavo, Luxi, and Symbiosis is that while, and this is sort of obvious for the people that are not familiar with Latin America, it's not a monoculture, right? Like Latin America is not, every country and all the states and the counties and the cities, it's very different. It's a diverse landscape of thoughts, ideas, language, and that's important. I think the interesting thing about Mexico and its proximity to the US, and I know this in speaking Spanish, because when you speak to people, let's say from Spain, the way that they think about the world or the way that they talk about the world, just in the words that they use and the way that they form their sentences is different than Mexico. And I think Mexico culturally and the way that people think and the way that they speak is really close to the way that people think in the United States. And so I can communicate ideas in English that resonate in a way with my counterparts in Mexico. And so the relationship, being able to manage that relationship is a cost that I could never measure. And I can tell you it's a very good return on investment.
That's pretty good answer. Yeah, and it's super, super interesting. And Gustavo, what other concerns have you seen with other clients before for hiring people from Latin America? And what is Aluxi, your company, doing for solving them?
Okay. Another great question. So, yeah, we've seen clients, for example, a great example is clients working with Indian companies at the same time they work with us. So what has been happening, it's exactly what Dana said. Like, we can notice and feel the frustration of not being able to communicate on I mean, you can speak the same language, but being really hard to communicate beyond that, like to communicate the vision of the product or to communicate certain skills. Technically, as Dana mentioned, you'll find talent everywhere in the world, but that extra connection that cultural fit brings has what I've been noticing as one of the biggest challenges for companies that are working with for example, other companies in Europe or India, even more than the time zone. So yeah, I think that has been the biggest challenge, the way of communicating, the way of doing things, the way of thinking, approaching a problem, the way that uh, us on this side of the continent would do is really different. So that's it.
Right. And following this question, how do you prepare your developers for working on remote projects? And how do you keep them motivated? Because it is easier in this industry that people lost interest in a product and they move to another company. So,
yeah. So it has been a challenge to us as well, because with so many opportunities opening up, we now just not compete with other Latin American companies, but also with U.S. companies, because it's other U.S. companies that are also seeing the talent on Latin America, and they want to bring them on board. So we've had cases where some of our developers are invited to join companies in the US. And basically how we work with that is we try and do a great effort to be really competitive in terms of salary, workload, work-life balance. And I think that's been a great difference. I can't speak for all the team, but we do make a great effort on our company being more than just work. Also, it's really motivating for the team. We still have a few projects on Mexico, so it's really motivating for the team to jump that gap. And we have a clear distinction, like, hey, these members are ready to make that jump because they have the skill, the cultural fit to communicate with a US client and are prepared for it. Some of them are still on training for that and waiting to make that jump, but we do have that internal jump, and it's something many members of the team are eager on. And when they achieved it, it's great because you have a highly motivated developer joining a project with a US client. And for us, it's great because our US clients are also very happy to have a developer motivated like that.
okay, that's very interesting, and I agree that it is a challenge, right? Because people are always trying to look for better opportunities to move. So you have to provide those opportunities, because if everyone is happy, they will show that on their performance. So that's pretty interesting. And Mr. Dana, what key factors do you value the most while evaluating candidates? I mean, like, do you talk about hiring freelancers as well, or you now that you have tried agency developers, would you stay with that, or how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think this touches upon my sort of thoughts on leadership. I think that anybody that's a founder that's looking to scale their company, and we're still small, but I in my pre-startup life, I worked with organizational development and growing businesses. So I think that it's important to recognize what you are good at and what you're not good at. Mm-hmm. And I am not a technologist. I understand technology. I'm a systems thinker. I have lots of different systems that we use to help manage the business. There's all kinds of third-party software that we integrate into the various processes to make it easier to do the things that we need to do, which is great because I'm not a designer, for example, but I know how to use Sketch. We just started integrating Miro into our process to better communicate sort of what's in my head, so that Gustavo can actually see what I see, because sometimes words aren't sufficient. But I think that the important thing is to recognize what are you good at and create a team, whether it's developers or anything else, marketing, HR, sales. You need to find people that can do the things that you're doing, but they'll do them better. And I think that what is great about a company like Aluxi, and especially having worked now with them for a number of months, is that, again, it's sort of this out of the box solution. Like if you need communication tools, you can sign up for Google Business and it's like, here's all this stuff, here it is. And you don't have to like create systems and permissions and whatever. In a similar way, working with an agency, there's just so much that they bring to the table. And I think what I knew that I needed was somebody that could help in project management, and someone who was highly organized, and someone that I could give direction and work with, but that understood the sort of vision and the global kind of where we were going, and could manage themselves, not entirely independently, because that's never possible, but a company or a person that that could kind of just go. And that's what I found. And that's why the relationship is so great, because I think, especially now, all these months later, what's been great is Gustavo, as you can see in the way that he answers your questions, is very thoughtful. And I think that you know, as the COO, that trickles down into the way that he thinks about hiring talent, and how he coaches talent, and how he you know, trains talent, etc. And so having thoughtful people that know how to ask good questions, and don't just say, yes, we'll build it, and then they build it and it's wrong, or they, you know, because that's the worst, is having somebody say, oh yeah, I understand, and then they don't understand. You know, so having that kind of thoughtfulness and organization is really, really valuable. And that certainly there are freelancers, and certainly there are individuals, you know, if Gustavo broke off alone, all of these skills would go with him. But having an agency and having a group of people whose the whole organization is aligned in the way that they think and the way that they work is incredibly valuable. But I think that the challenging thing as a founder is there's no one size fits all. And I can't tell you how many of these webinars, you know, I joined in the early stages to try to learn, and you're just like looking for someone to tell you what to do for your particular business. And you really just need to try things and make mistakes and just keep finding what works for you. But I think that if you can find a person or a team that's very well organized and that can help you think about what you need, because you're not sure, you don't know, or you think you know, but you're not communicating it correctly, I think that's incredibly valuable. So the short answer to your question is, I would probably look for an agency, because there's built-in organization there. And if I did have a freelancer, it would probably be for like a specific project, or on the design side. It probably wouldn't be on the development side.
Okay, that's pretty interesting, because yeah, we're normally used to find contractors or freelancers, but for the core part of the product, it is important to have someone that you know that has the accountability, the commitment for developing your product as you require, right? And you mentioned some tools. What tools do you recommend for managing the remote development of your product?
Well, I think there's the basics of like Zoom and Slack and things like that. And I think as you start to figure out your needs, there's, you know, so for communicating an idea, I think I'm a visual person, and I think that there's a lot of, you know, there's the saying, a picture says 1,000 words. So I am new to this product. I hadn't seen it before, but it's called Miro. And what it allows for me to do is integrate a whole bunch of tools together. So I use Sketch, which is, I think they have a free version for early founders who are looking for being scrappy, but there is a paid version as well. So I use Sketch to kind of map out my ideas and create mockups and wireframes and things like that. And then that I can integrate into this product called Miro, which helps the asynchronous communication with the development team. So the design goes up into Miro, and then Miro has these tools like Post-it notes and things like that, and I can do workflows and charts. And so I can actually take something that's a static image or a static mock-up and show, not literally, but show the user flow, right? So I want it, when you click here, I can draw an arrow. This is what happens here. all of that integrates into Jira, which is a project management tool that we use to communicate. It's very popular. As a non-technical person and somebody who's fairly new to this level of development and developer management, I find it actually a very annoying, as amazing as it is. Jira is very sort of complicated to use. It took me a little while to learn it, but that's why something like Miro is so helpful, because Jira will help you manage the various tasks and tickets, but communicating like how those things work together, the visual aid of using a product like Miro is really helpful. And then managing the actual system itself, we use a lot of backend, like I'll call them alarms. So there's error managers and there's traffic managers and things, and all of this stuff creates a feedback loop that is very, very important. So you have your idea, you need to communicate it to the developers. I think visual aids are very helpful, helping them understand what is in your head. Especially for someone like me who's not technical. I don't, and Gustavo, he's very patient with me. But I think something is very clear. And then when when he or his team says, oh, so this is what you want, I'm like, no, that's not it. And then I see like where I didn't communicate. So having that visual aid is really helpful. Then you push that out into the world. The users are going to tell you whether it worked, it didn't work, whether it makes sense, something that we didn't do QA on or whatever. And we need that feedback loop of errors so that Gustavo knows, okay, I need to go to this place in the code, or this is where this thing is. So using tools like Sentry or Datadog or CoralLogix or things like that, which help you understand like what's happening on the back end. And if there's problems, it throws up flags, and all of that integrates into Slack. So we get those notifications at the same time. So if I see something, I can say, hey, what is this about? And just keeping that feedback loop the whole way through. Yeah, I know that was a long answer, but.
No, but it's very, very interesting, because you mentioned a lot of tools that are commonly used for this kind of collaborations. So I will ask Gustavo, do you know any other tools and that you think that they could be implemented?
So I think it's summarized into having more than the tool itself. Like I'd say first, it should be the tool that fits you the best. In the case of the project with Mistbox, I think we built a whole ecosystem of a communication tool, like a project management tool, a reporting tool. And the interesting thing is that they can all wire together and give you that feedback loop that Dana was mentioning. So I think the ones he mentioned are the ones we normally use. Miro, it's definitely getting a lot of hype, and I highly recommend it. Sentry has been out for a while. It will integrate with, it's very likely that whatever stack you're on, at least with the most popular ones, it will integrate smoothly, and it will give you like error or alert reporting. I'd say probably Uptime Robot to always keep track of your site, and something for APM and backend tracking like Datadog or CoralLogix, so you can also keep track of your app's health. Probably I would add Intercom, which is one of Dana's favorite tools to have direct support to clients. Definitely a great tool. And there's like so many out there. I'd say identify what is the most important things you need to track or understand or have clear information on, and then choose your tools based on those needs, because there's likely a tool that will resolve it, and there's very likely it will have a free plan. And the good things about these tools, it's that most of them will scale as you do. So if you're a one team member, it's going to be probably $5 a month. If you're 100 people, then probably it scales, but you can afford it by then. So yeah, rely on those tools.
Perfect. And yeah, and as the company grows, you're able to access to new features of these tools, so it makes sense to use them. So, okay, well, we're gonna move to the Q&A section. We have a couple of good, great questions from our audience. So I'll be reading them out loud, and please, if Mr. Dana or Gustavo would like to answer them, just go ahead and respond. The first one is from Grace. What is the added value that a Latin American can contribute? Who would like to start?
Gustavo, maybe as a Latin American, would you like
I'm
to?
the Latin American. Okay, so I think we've gone through most of them, but I think one is that definitely the cost is an added value, because you'll find a lot cheaper developer with similar skill, sometimes if you're lucky, even a higher skill. So that's definitely something. Also, we've gone through the cultural fit. You'll find a great cultural fit that is very similar to the folks at the US. And I think definitely the time zone as well. And we're, as Latin Americans, we're highly motivated, excited to be working with US companies. We've gone through that a little bit as well. And this is something I see every day. When someone from Latin America gets the opportunity to gets the opportunity to work with a US company. I'm a real soccer fan, so it's like playing on Liga MX and then moving to the Champions League or
Nice.
So it's a great growth in either in challenge, compensation. So we're highly motivated, and I think that's getting reflected on how all these companies are eager to participate on that market share.
Okay, that was a great and very complete answer. Thanks, Gustavo. We have another question from Francisco. What if you use a team instead of just staff augmentation? Will that make sense for the start stage? I believe that will be a good question for you, Mr. Dana.
Yeah, I think this is one of those questions that like a founder is just looking for what should they do. And it unfortunately it's a one size fits one, because there's factors that are involved. You know, teams need to be managed, people need to be managed. And I think, you know, you as a founder need to understand your skill set and whether or not you'll be able to manage them. But startups, you know, even well-funded startups are still startups. So it depends on your stage. It depends on your costs. It depends on your, you know, and when I say costs, I mean the budget that you have available, right? Because it might make sense to have a team. You know, I sit here and I think of all the things that I could do if I had $1 billion, but I don't have $1 billion. So what can I do now to move forward? And so unfortunately, this is one of those questions that there isn't an answer that's going to, like, you know, help every founder that's on this webinar that might be viewing it later. You just need to really think about what bandwidth you have if you're going to be managing the team, and what the needs are of the business, both from a cost perspective and a development perspective, because sometimes you don't need a whole team. Sometimes you just need someone who's highly motivated and talented and organized and thoughtful. And sometimes you do need a whole team, a full stack of developers. You know, development isn't just the technological delivery, it's the project management, it's the systems management, it's the design, it's the understanding of the user flow, it's quality assurance and making sure the product is functioning correctly, before it ships, after it ships. So Sometimes it makes sense for a team, and sometimes it makes sense to just kind of add a person or add a freelancer.
That's pretty interesting, and I agree on that part. And it also comes with this next question for you, Mr. Dana. What has been the experience with Mexico resources as it pertains to meeting deadlines and sense of urgency?
Yeah, so again, this is sort of a funny question because I think it's not, I don't view it as like Gustavo as a Mexican does this. I see it, I mean, of course, Gustavo is Mexican and he does the things that he does, but I don't think it's because he's Mexican. I think that it's because he's Gustavo. And so I think that, I guess to answer the question a little bit practically, there's two parts to the relationship, right? So if I am doing my part to contribute to the relationship of making sure that what I'm asking for is clear, making sure that the deadline is clear, making sure that I'm managing the project clearly, meaning, and we're in the middle of this right now where it's like, as a co-founder, I'm like, I want to build all this stuff. And then we go through the sprint organization and planning, and we're like, okay, well, here's the 35 things that you said you wanted. We can do 2 because those 2 are going to take this amount of time. And so I think that as a founder, I am also responsible for these deadlines because I need to make sure that what I'm asking for them to do is clear and that I'm managing the project correctly, in that I'm giving space to Gustavo and his team to say, hey, we're not going to be able to do this, and setting the deadlines accurately. Because you can put into Jira that the sprint is 2 weeks and you're going to have these 45 things. Just because that's what it says in Jira does not mean, or your project, whatever project management, Asana is another great project management tool. Just because you said that that's what you were going to do doesn't mean that that's what's going to happen. But I would say my experience with working with Gustavo, who is Mexican, has been great. When deadlines aren't being met, we have the relationship where we can communicate that, we can adjust, and that's, I think, the important thing about running a startup successfully is you just have to be nimble and you have to focus on not necessarily what went wrong, but how to make it right, which is a management philosophy I have across the board. So yeah, I'm answering the question, but not at the same time, because again, I don't think that whatever somebody's nationality or cultural identity, I don't think that necessarily makes them good or not good at timelines and deadlines. I think there's way more to it.
Factors. Yeah. I agree with you, Mr. Tana. Yeah. And we have one question for you, Gustavo, from Grace. What are the main soft skills that identify a Latin American?
I think that's so many good questions. Okay, so I think Latin Americans, we're very people oriented, and the US guys as well. But I think we're really cheerful, and that is totally unrelated with technical work. But we tend to want to have a lot of fun at work. So I think this is, it might not exactly be a social skill, but it does add value. At least for us, it's really critical that the project we choose, and this goes back to, again, happy hands make good work. So definitely the fact that we do like, we're very interested on enjoying what we're doing, adds value to that relationship. But it's a totally like intrinsic value that you'll never see on a CV or on a project requirement or whatever. The other skill is we're highly, I don't want to say available, but yes, which makes a really good fit for software projects. So when there is, as Dana mentioned a few questions ago, when there is maybe some off-time demands, we're really willing to cooperate and really get the issue solved. And one last thing would be that we're also very solutions oriented. And it's one of the core differences I've noticed while working with companies maybe from Europe or India. They want to do tasks. We want to solve problems. So those would be like some soft skills that might not be strictly related to the technical work, but add a lot of value to when working as a staffing company.
And that also comes with the second question: which work methodologies are the most common for your company?
Yeah, definitely. That's agile. 100% agile. I think it has ruled as software development for at least 5 years now, or and before that it used to be a waterfall, but then you had a really long time where you were just blind and the product was delivered and it turned out that it was not exactly the way the client expected. So it generated a lot of cost and a lot of software failures. I think for this type of projects, agile is definitely the way to go. I've worked with agile 100 times, and that 100 times it's been 100 times different. So everyone makes their own version of agile, unless you have gone like to the PMP project and you follow like very strict guidelines. I think grab a version of agile that you like, and then adapt it to your current workflow.
Okay. And one last question for you, Gustavo, in this part. As an agency, how to convey trust for a potential customer who wasn't aware of Latin America as a technology hub?
Well, I think this is a great part in which Symbiosis gets a great job done, because sometimes many great Latin Americas, and I'm not just talking about us, but there's also, like us, there's a lot of great companies emerging in Latin America and eager to access these opportunities. So to answer your question, to build trust, I think Symbiosis does a great work, like doing a little bit that work for us, because when Dana, for example, we met Dana, he was already like into the idea of hiring us, which when we've contacted our clients directly, it has been a great challenge on the other end, because exactly of that reason, like they've never hired a company in Latin America, and they're worried like they're going to spend a lot of money and it's going to fail, whatever. So probably if you know someone that has hired companies in Latin America, then ask them about if they know a good company, and also always ask for references of previous work or previous clients. On our end, while partnering with Symbiosis has been a great deal of help, because you guys do a great job like building that trust with US clients, and we can focus also on our work, which is delivering the service to clients. But yeah, basically there's no exact answer for that. Just do a great work and be accountable every time, and eventually I think your reputation will work and
in your favor, right? Yeah,
exactly. Obviously.
Yeah.
Hopefully
Yeah.
in favor. Yeah.
I agree. And we do have one last question for you, Mr. Dana. It says, according to your expectation, what will be the average price per hour for a developer? Understanding there are many variables, but since price is a major factor when choosing a region, what price per hour will be most likely attract you as a customer?
Yeah. So again, this is one of those answers, and I'm guessing that Gabriel, you're a developer who's trying to figure out how much money he can make. Tell me I'm wrong, I guess. But I think that it really depends. So I can tell you what my answer would be at Meesbox for my development needs. But a couple, which I won't do, but what I will do is talk a little bit more about the framework, about the way that I think about it. So first of all, I think that, you can pay, and I have done this, you can pay $20, $25, $30 an hour for offshore development. This is what that was about, and that's US dollars. That's about what it would cost for us to perform similar project, or what it costs in the early stages of my company working with the developers in India. I think that dollar value, $20 to $30 per hour, is pretty, that's sort of become kind of the entry level of where what the expectation is. I think that most companies, the real answer is you want to pay the least amount of money as possible and get the best result. So the other factor here, though, is that as a company, it depends on what I need. And I always say you get what you pay for. Mm-hmm. So I can hire developers at $20 an hour, but if their skill set is insufficient, and that could be not just the coding, but it could be their communication skills, their organizational skills, their project management skills, their collaboration skills. It's not just the price in dollars that I'm thinking about. So what I can say is that I think if I'm paying somewhere between $20 and $30 per hour for most development, that's probably a good spot for me. I think for more advanced development needs and for project managers, you're going to start paying more than that, and you should, because a really good project manager and a really good systems engineer and architect and somebody who can help you manage down and work with your junior and mid-level developers, that's worth, $40, $50 an hour, depending on, but I think maybe Gustavo, I don't know if you want to talk about kind of how your pricing structure works for, I don't know if that might help answer that question for him.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'd say, again, I'm not sure if you're a developer looking to work with the US directly. I'm pretty sure if you look long enough, you'll find a client to do so. And it's always like, as an individual developer, well, you have to take care of practically everything regarding the relationship with the client. So obviously that's going to be paid more. If you work for a US company, you have a fixed salary, which might vary a lot if you're working for a company in Mexico or a company on the US. But going back to your question, I'd say, yeah, probably if you, for general numbers, I'd say probably $50 to $60 an hour. It's a regular rate for a senior developer in Mexico. And probably it can go, I've seen up to $200 an hour or $150 for the same developer or a similar skill set on the US. So that's kind of the radio or range that we're currently seeing most frequently. So I'd say probably 1/3 of the cost for a similar skill set. Again, you might find that $200 developer an hour in Mexico, which is a unicorn, and he will offer his services. And if someone is willing to pay them, well, and the other way around, like it's not exact, but it's just a general trend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree, and somehow it depends, right, on the position and the technologies and the level of experience. Yeah. So it varies a lot, and sometimes at least what we're trying to do here at Symbiosis is that you will set the monthly budget, and then the software agencies will be able to present their candidates if they meet the requirements and also the budget that you have. So that's kind of the process. We're about to finish this event right now. We very much appreciate your time, guys. We will share this presentation on video to all the attendees, and also we'll share the contact information for Mr. Dana and also from Gustavo on that email. So if any of you guys are interested in reaching out to them, please be aware of that email so you can reach out to them and ask you more questions or doing business with them. Thank you for being with us today. I hope that this event was very, very instructive as it was for us. So we very much appreciate your time, guys. Mr. Dana, Gustavo, it's always a pleasure to meet with you. And well, we hope you have a good one. Okay?
You too. Thank you very much for having us.
Our pleasure.
Thanks so much. A great event.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Bye.